Good evening and welcome to the Draft Savages NFL Draft Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Cox. With me tonight, my co-host, Justin Higdon. How you doing, Justin?
I'm just absorbing all the takes from this draft class. I'm excited to talk about it tonight. There's a lot of things that I thought initially that I don't think today, so I'm excited to talk about that.
And, of course, the one and only Justice Mosqueda, Coach Justice now. Justice, how are you?
Good. Can't complain too much. I mean, it was hailing like crazy yesterday, but now it's like totally sunny because Oregon doesn't.
And, of course, we're brought to you by footballsavages.com. And you can find all our Draft Savages podcasts there. The draft is come and gone, guys. I mean, a lot of us spend, 8-9 months looking at it, but it really heats up the last, January to whenever they hold the draft now. What did you think overall, just your overall thoughts on days 1, 2, and 3 of the draft, Justice?
I thought day one was kind of boring, to be totally honest. As far as like an entertainment value, the only guy we really had slipping in any sort of way was Leonard Williams, and even then he slipped into the sixth slot. So it's not even like that was something we were monitoring all day. I think we kind of knew that guys like Randy Gregory, if anything, it was going to be a late first round pick. Really there was no like shocking surprise in the first round. So I mean, and there were no trades. There were no like big moves for like people to get excited about. So I mean, overall on the first day at least, it was pretty boring. And then once it got to day three, there were some guys drafted that like I hadn't seen at all. I know that dude out of Delaware State that the Cardinals moved up to get. Watched 0 snaps of him, so I was like, okay, all right, here's like a fourth rounder or something that like I hadn't seen at all. Drafting is pretty fun. I wrote a bunch of articles. If like you want to read anything about the Packer players, I got like 3 articles on like every single one of them.
Justin, your overall thoughts on the 2015 NFL draft? Jesus, I almost said 2016.
Well, it's never too early to start talking about next year, but no, I agree with Justice. Like day one was kind of boring, except for the fact that I just totally didn't understand what the Browns' plan was for Cameron Irving at 19, and I lost like 30 followers that night when I voiced that opinion. But one of the great takeaways that I have is because it was here in Chicago, and I was able to go down on Saturday for day 3, and the city of Chicago just really put on a great experience for fans, and it was just a really fun time down there, and I hope that they're able to get the draft back to Chicago in future years, because it was just like the setup was awesome. There was a lot of interactive things to do. It wasn't something that only like diehard football and draft fans could enjoy. It was something that everybody could enjoy. So I'm hoping that they are able to get it back in Chicago in the near future and maybe for years to come.
I have one thing to say. I forgot about like the quiet, like you brought up you voicing your opinion and mixing guys getting unfollowed on Twitter. So the thing about Green Bay is nothing ever comes out of Green Bay, period. Like, you're never going to get any info from that staff, especially the way it's constructed, where it sounds like almost like there's a board, but Ted Thompson's going to throw ideas live at you when you're on the clock, and he's going to kind of make a decision based on that. When Demarius Randall tweeted Green Bay and then put like 3 smiley face emojis, and Packer fans are like, "Do we just take a safety again?" Like, no one had really put together that he had cornerback in his background because he played at, in junior college at corner. So Packer fans were like confused and were having meltdowns for like 30 minutes before Ted Thompson went up there and talked about him.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, nothing ever comes out of Green Bay, and good old Demarius ruining things right off the bat.
I graded him as a 3rd round safety.
Well, you'll get over that. When you look at just overall the draft, I think Justin hit it. Listening to Jeff Risdon and the guys at GM Jr. talk about just the experience down in Chicago. Sounds like they did a great job. So, yeah, Rizdon's takes are hilarious from the whole weekend, so you should definitely follow him just for that. But I got all of Darren Page's takes pulled up on my screenshots.
Yeah,
So,
and just to interrupt briefly, like I actually got to hang out with Risden on Saturday, which was really always fun. But like Justice alluded to, neither one of us had heard of the guy that the Cardinals took from Delaware State. So we're sitting there like, who? This one? What?
it's yeah. I mean, the funniest thing that happened during that time was the reaction from Cardinals fans, right? Like, who the hell is this guy? We just traded up. What we got 2 extra draft picks from trading down in round 2 or whenever it was, and now you trade up to get a guy from Delaware State that nobody's ever heard of, and it was really funny to like look at how everybody reacted. And I have a buddy that was actually at the facility when it happened, and all the writers and the guys down there were like, who the hell did we just take? Like, we don't even know who this is. And to be fair, they're not even draft people, most of them. But I mean, it was the same reaction. Everybody's like, what the hell just happened? Like, Rodney Gunter. That's one of those fake names that Eric Stoner tweets out towards like the end of the draft. Draft time, and to see if people are like, oh yeah, I love that guy. So and then the Cardinals drafted him in the 4th round. But I guess when you can draft a guy that's 6'5", 300 pounds and moves, you do it. So I mean, here's the thing I'll say about that pick as we get into this, and this can be a kind of a lead-in. When it comes to small school guys, I'll never knock them because I honestly, like, I've never even watched a single snap of his, and then people watch highlight videos and are like, oh, he's going to be great. I'm like, well, you understand highlight videos are like the best part of what he does. So hopefully his highlight videos are good, because if they're not good, then that's a terrible pick. So but I talked to Emery Hunt, who actually watched him in person play, and he said he had a 6th round grade on him. So it made me feel a little better about like the pick and everything, and trying to understand the whole reasoning behind it. But yeah, overall it was kind of funny and interesting when that happened. Justice, we'll start with you. Just overall, your favorite kind of classes that you saw come out of here?
Oh, Atlanta? You mean others in Atlanta, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like Atlanta's class, I was actually pretty surprised that Vic Beasley was a pick, because I mean, talking to people, it sounded like he was gonna fall. Like that was the guy to fall. And for some reason, they didn't take Dupree, and the Dupree ended up just falling all the way down to the Steelers. I mean, I thought Dupree was going to be the pick at 6 in New York, before they ended up taking Leonard Williams, who's, quote unquote, like, slipped. But the Falcons, I mean, they put up Vic Beasley. They got Jalen Collins, who I'm not a huge fan of, but I mean, you obviously see the upside. Tevin Coleman, I mean, he's a home run hitter. I don't know if he's going to be an every down back, but he's definitely like a high quality change of pace type of guy. And we have Justin Hardy, who like everyone in like the whole draft internet community loves. And then in the 5th round, they got Grady Jarrett. I don't know what Grady Jarrett did. Like, he must have I don't know, he must have failed like 50 drug tests or something. Like, Grady Jarrett is probably the best 3 technique in this class, along with Michael Bennett, who also fell. I have no idea how those 2 guys just dropped. Like, when Xavier Cooper went before them, I was like, oh, okay, we might be in for a long day for him.
When you look at what the Falcons did, it felt like they really just sat there and said, okay, this is who draft Twitter likes. I'm just going to pick. I mean, obviously, that's not what happened, but that's kind of what it seems like. Like, Vic Beasley sitting there at 8, and everybody's clamoring for Vic Beasley. He went. Jalen Collins was a draft Twitter favorite, gone. Draft Twitter's really split on Tevin Coleman, but the people that loved him, like Brian Perez and the other guy, his name is escaping me right now, like, absolutely loved Tevin Coleman and got him, at pick 73 in the 3rd round. Justin Hardy in the 4th is interesting when you look at where all the other wide receivers went, right? Like,
Yeah.
they all went off the board quick in that 2 to 3 range. And then, like you talked about Grady Jarrett, did you ask Josh? Because I know he was I think he ended up with Jarrett at 21, right? Like his 21st overall player. Did you ask Josh if he made any calls about what happened with him?
I don't think we were able to piece it together. He was coming in and out of the Mecca chat on draft day, and he was giving us little bits of information that he had heard. And I don't think we ever got anything definitive on Jarrett, and I haven't been able to get it out of anyone. I've been able to talk about the Michael Bennett thing, but it's the same thing that sorry about that, clear my throat. It's the same thing that we've talked about before. I mean, some teams thought that he didn't love the game enough. And I don't know how to value that, and I haven't gotten any information other than that. So, I mean, I don't know if that drops a guy who's, in this class, a fringe first-round talent, all the way down to this middle of day 3. But Grady Jarrett, I've gotten zero info on. No clue.
Justin, when you look at this, who are some of your favorite classes?
Obviously I like the Cowboys. I mean, what happened today really impacts that as they get La'el Collins as an undrafted free agent. And that's coming from a guy, as you guys know, who wasn't in love with La'el Collins. I didn't think he was a first-round guy like a lot of people. But even if he's a third-round guy like I thought he was, to get him as an undrafted free agent is an absolute steal. And then you get Randy Gregory, who I thought was a top 5 player, in the second round, and I know you're taking some chances as far as things like, I don't want to even say character with Gregory and Collins because their situations were so unique, but that's kind of what, they're taking some chances and they're coming away with really some excellent players. If you would have told anybody that they get those two guys and Byron Jones, who I thought was a second round pick, that's a great draft. And then they get a guy like Ryan Russell from Purdue, who's a very underrated and versatile defensive lineman. They get a linebacker in Damian Wilson from Minnesota, who I was really high on, but he was really productive, very athletic guy. And then tack on a couple other athletic linemen, Chaz Green, Lawrence Gibson. That's a really great draft. And Dallas just hit the ball out of the park. They were fortunate with what they were able to do with Collins, but it really is a home run draft. And then I actually liked Pittsburgh's draft, unfortunately, because as a Browns fan, you don't want to see your rivals get better. But they end up with Bud Dupree at 19. He just falls right into their lap. They get a couple corners that I really liked in Senquez Golson and Duran Grant. Golson went a little higher than I would have expected, but he's such a ball hawk. And Grant was a steal in the 4th round. And then I know this is a guy Justice likes. They get Anthony Chickalow in the 6th round. So Pittsburgh, and they get Holloman in the 7th round. And I'm not a big Holloman guy, but that's right where he could go and make an impact. So Pittsburgh and Dallas, to me, are the two big winners. I love what they did. Both teams had a plan, and they just nailed it.
One of the teams, I should say, that I really liked was the Baltimore Ravens. I'm not a huge Perriman fan, but the rest of their draft I did like a lot. I thought getting Max Williams in round 2 was important, but I really liked the Carl Davis.
Yeah, right before Green Bay too.
Yeah, and then Za'Darius. I like that middle part where they went Davis, Za'Darius Smith, and Buck Allen. I like all 3 of those guys probably more than I should. So, which for Baltimore fans probably means this draft's just going to be terrible for them. But and then I like that pick of Darren Waller in the last round. He's one of those sneaky guys that can come in and just be a red zone threat, maybe in 2016. But I don't know. Ozzy's always always good in the draft. Another draft I liked, and I know our buddy Joe Goodberry hated it, but I liked what the Bengals did. Maybe it's because I've watched so much putrid offensive line play for so long in Arizona that whenever a team's willing to go draft offensive linemen, I'm like, all right, I think that's good. But the fact that they got, Agbui, who's probably not going to be ready in 2015, and it's not really going to impact him one way or another. But then they go and get Jake Fisher, who, Justice has talked about. He can play anywhere on the offensive line. It's kind of that Green Bay philosophy. It's like, all right, well, we just drafted a bunch of left tackles, and we'll let the best one play left tackle and move the rest of them around until we figure out the best five. I'm not a I like Paul Dawson, so at 99 I thought that was a good pick, but I really like the Marcus Hardison pick. I know other people wanted them to take Grady Jarrett there, but I think Hardison's going to be the better player when it's all said and done. So that's just like personal preference. I don't think you can say right now one way or the other who what the right pick was. But those are
No,
mine.
I think you're right.
All right, enough of that. When you look at the other side, whose draft sucked? And by sucked, I mean on our grades, we didn't like them. And then, next year when Travis Frederick is an all-pro center, we're all going to be like, well, it was a reach at the time, but now it makes sense that he's an all-pro type center. What about you, Justice?
Man, the Carolina Panthers taking Shaq Thompson that high was kind of surprising to me because it sounded like after the combine, all that kind of like Shaq Thompson's going to be the first inside linebacker, off the ball linebacker, taken, kind of was thrown out the window. And then the Buffalo Bills, I didn't really like their draft. I mean, they don't have a first round pick, but outside of Ronald Darby, I don't know how many impact players they really got. I mean, they got John Miller, Carlos Williams, and Tony Stewart. I don't think any of those guys are top-end guys who can contribute to a team day one. And then Nick O'Leary. Do you know whose grandson he is? Nick O'Leary?
No, you're going to have to tell me that one.
I think like that's the only reason he was drafted is like announcers somehow were like, hey, you guys, just take this guy, give us some content. Like Nick O'Leary, I don't know if how long he's gonna last in the NFL. And the last pick is probably the one that I like the most, the Desmond Lewis from Central Arkansas, because the kid can fly. I don't know why he lasted until the 7th round, but I mean, like if your 7th round pick is your second best, draft asset, that's not a great draft. I'm not a huge fan of what the Bills did, and it looked like they're just trying to build like Florida State's team.
Yeah, that was interesting to see him take 3 guys from Florida State. That's always interesting. The running back thing I didn't understand either. It's like you just traded for LaShawn McCoy. I know Williams is a different type of back, but I feel like when you talk about just draft capital and things of that nature at that time, you probably could have spent your capital a little better in just a different spot. The Panthers, we talked about this. I don't remember what episode, but we talked about their weird defensive strategy, and so it's just like they're basically going to play 3 linebackers now at all times in passing downs because now they have 3 great coverage linebackers, right? Like,
Right.
are they basically saying, well, screw getting corners and safeties that can cover. We're just going to get coverage linebackers and then, cut off the middle of the field and make you throw outside the hashes. I mean, that's kind of what it seems like they're doing with their draft picks and how they've built their defense now.
Yeah, I don't know how that one's gonna work, but good luck to him.
When you look at the Panthers, Justin, why did they wait until day 3? Obviously, they traded up and traded away their 3rd-round picks, or their 3rd-round picks, to get Devin Funchess. But didn't they need to address their offensive line earlier?
Well, I think that's the prevailing wisdom, that they should have gone with an offensive tackle early. But the thing is, like, if you think like I do about this class, this tackle class wasn't great. They get a guy that a lot of people, I think, liked in Darrell Williams, but I found it interesting that he is listed as a guard on NFL.com. So I don't know if that's what their plan is, to move him to guard. We have heard since the draft ended that they are hopeful that Michael Oher can be their left tackle, and that is a scary, scary proposition. But these teams all have plans. You wonder what the plans are. When I write down my worst draft list, I find myself writing down all the NFC West teams, and then realizing that those
Hey,
teams
hey, screw
are.
you.
But I find that those teams are teams that we question their draft, and then 2 years later we're like, oh, these are pretty good players. So it's hard to question when teams have like a definitive plan, and Carolina's is like you guys talked about, coverage linebackers that their defensive line is meant to keep clean, and then those guys end up being successful linebackers. We've seen it with Thomas Davis. We've seen it with Kuechly. Now, the Rams were a team that I really hated right off the bat, hated their draft, and then I look back at it and I kind of understand what they're doing. Even if I think Rob Havenstein went like 5 rounds too early, I understand, and they back that up with a couple other offensive line picks. Seattle's picks are always weird, but they pick athletes to mirror the guys that are already on their team. So, Carolina, they get Funchess. They've got kind of a Twin Towers thing going, so I think that's their plan. Keep their linebackers clean, get these Twin Towers for Cam, and he's mobile enough that maybe you don't need the best offensive line in the world.
When you look at the undrafted free agent period, and let's take out Mr. Lyle Collins and that today, because I think that's a pretty much consensus home run for the Cowboys there. What were some of the undrafted free agent landing spots that you like, Justice?
Well, Bo Wallace apparently took Terrell Pryor's spot in Kansas City. Like he was signed, and then like the other shoe fell, and now Terrell Pryor's like visiting with other teams and stuff. If he could replicate what he did against Bama, he might have a shot. The Cowboys took Brandon Bridge, who was my top undrafted quarterback in back-to-back years, because they had Dustin Vaughn last year too. Like they now have 2 backup quarterbacks who probably aren't going to surpass Brandon Weeden on the depth chart, but like are better prospects than him. So I mean, I like what they did there, and then I mean obviously the Lyle thing, like you said. I'm trying to think of who some of the other big names are, and nothing's coming to mind. I mean, we got interesting guys like Devontae Davis signing with the Eagles and things like that, but I mean, overall, this draft class wasn't very talented, I guess, and it would make sense for this undrafted free agent class not to be super deep either.
I'll be a homer, and I'll talk about Xavier Williams. I really like that pickup for the Cardinals. They signed Corey Peters. That's going to be their starting nose tackle. But now all of a sudden with Xavier Williams, I think you have a guy who can come in and push Alameda Te'amu to become the backup nose tackle. And the Cardinals rotate their nose tackles a lot, like when healthy, I should say. So you could see Xavier Williams put up 200 plus snaps in year one, and that would be a good get for a team like that. How about you, Justin? Any ones you really liked?
Yeah, I want to touch on Miami Dolphins. They got 3 undrafted linebackers, and unfortunately I'm forgetting one of them, but I know Zach Vigil, one of my personal favorites, a guy I would have taken as early as the 4th round. He goes to Miami as an undrafted free agent. They also got Mike Hall, and again, a third guy who's escaping my memory right now.
Jeff Luck?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Jeff Luke from Cincinnati. So they pick up 3 guys who are draftable inside linebackers as undrafted free agents, and they get to kind of sort that out for themselves in mini camps and training camp. I wouldn't be surprised if 2 of the 3 guys make that team, and I almost guarantee one of the 3 will. And then if one of those 3 or 2 of those 3 get cut, those are guys that can latch on elsewhere. Another one I liked, B.J. Finney. Again, this is a Pittsburgh player. He's a center, and I think can develop into a starter. He is not a good athlete, but he is tough as nails, interior offensive lineman, and he just doesn't lose many one-on-one battles. And then a couple other ones I liked. Zach Zenner goes to Detroit. I would love to have seen Zach Zenner end up in Dallas with all their still the offensive linemen, and they don't have really a go-to running back right there. But he ends up in Detroit, where I think he'll give Joyke Bell a run for his money. And I thought it was interesting what Cleveland did in undrafted free agency. They signed like they signed and drafted like 5 H-back/fullback types, and 2 of the undrafted guys they got in that vein were Jimmy Mundane from Kansas and E.J. Bibbs from Iowa State. These guys, they're looking for they courted Charles Clay as a restricted free agent. They're looking for a H-back, fullback type to throw the ball to. These guys are interesting prospects. Their new offensive coordinator, DiFilippo, was in Oakland last year where they threw to running backs and fullbacks 150 times. So they're looking for a receiver out of the backfield, and those are interesting guys to me.
Yeah, and I forgot to plug Marcus Rush, Force Players. He ended up in San Francisco, so he's gonna like take Alden Smith's job or something. No, I'm just playing.
I was going to ask you about that, but you brought it up. So.
I'll plug one more guy, a local guy here in Chicago that the Bears got was Bryce Callahan, nickel corner special teamer out of Rice. This is a player I had a chance to see live about 4 times, and then again at the Shrine Game practices. This is a really interesting special team slot corner, and he tested through the roof on his pro day. So I think the Bears might get a steal there, and they definitely need secondary help. This team has had a bad secondary for like 3-4 years.
If there's one thing Vic Fangio can do is like pretty much like just throw out a cornerback and have him play like starting caliber football. I mean, you look at the quarterback San Francisco had and the production that they were able to get, and you're kind of amazed. I don't know how much of that comes from him, but I mean, if that scheme translates, that's why I think like Fuller is going to be
awesome. Yeah,
it's a wrap, man. Like teaming up Fuller with Fangio and teaming up Xavier Rhodes with Zimmer is just like, all right, that's done. Like, all right, you guys got Pro Bowlers.
And that's a good point because that's why I don't hate Minnesota's draft class because they took Waynes at 11, but I think if he's going to be successful, a guy like Trey Waynes with Mike Zimmer's defense is going to be that's his best shot. So I can't hate on that pick.
Right. And that class was good as hell too.
Yeah.
Like they got Eric Kendricks. They ended up getting Donnell Hunter, who I don't think anyone was like super high on. I mean, at one point we heard like the smallest amount of buzz about him potentially going as high as like Cincinnati's pick in the first round, but I don't think anyone really bought that. But getting him in like the mid-third round was kind of a big deal. Like that team just keeps winning the draft. I'm so scared. I'm so scared that they're actually going to be decent.
When you look at fits and just look at teams that picked a player that you just think fits what they want to do and is going to be successful, whether or not you like that player or not, who are some names that come to mind right away for you, Justin?
Seth, you touched on him earlier, man. Brashad Perriman and Carl Davis to the Ravens. Perriman was a guy that I wasn't super high on, but when you talk about fitting him into that Torrey Smith role, I think that's where he can be successful. And then Carl Davis, I tweeted this when he was drafted. He's going to get in that locker room, and they're going to light the fire under his ass, and he's going to end up being this great player that we didn't – well, some of us might have seen coming, but not everybody because his tape was so-so. Another one I really liked, Justice, your boys, taking Brett Hundley in the 5th round. I mean, what a steal. Hundley's the 3rd best quarterback in this class. He is in the perfect situation for himself and his career going forward. And it wouldn't shock me at all. And I know it wouldn't shock many people to see him flipped for like a high 2nd or 3rd round pick in a couple of years after he's had a chance to sit and develop. And then in the same vein, Garrett Grayson going to New Orleans. Ideal fit for those 2 quarterbacks to go to teams where they have established starters. They have shown the ability to develop lesser players behind them like Chase Daniel and Matt Flynn. So you've got 2 talented quarterbacks going to developmental situations where they have an excellent opportunity to succeed down the road and maybe get traded and become starters down the road.
Justice, what about for you?
Yeah, one thing that I think is interesting is the selection of Nelson Aguilar. Because because I don't think we really thought. I mean, we had people who liked Nelson Aguilar, but it almost seemed like the consensus that like, all right, he's not gonna be like the top 20 pick that he ended up being. So if you look at what Jordan Matthews was able to do under Chip Kelly's system last year, there's a very strong argument that he had like a top 3 slot receiver year of all time. And he's top 5 by a pretty good margin. So to get Nelson Aguilar, who like actually excels in the slot with Chip Kelly, that's going to be really interesting to me because Nelson Aguilar, like, he will not stop in traffic. Like, Nelson Aguilar's biggest plus, at least in my opinion, is that he's just kind of full force all the time, and he's looking at lanes and defenses like it's almost like he's a returner on special teams. Like that mode is just flipped on him 24/7. Mabeo Digazoa slipping all the way to the 3rd round. I mean, this is the Justin Tuck situation all over again. I mean, Justin Tuck was injured, got picked up in the 3rd round by the Giants way back when. I'm so scared that team's going to start like actually being able to compete and beat the Packers in the playoffs every season again. Henry Anderson going to the Colts is kind of interesting because like he might be their best defensive player. I don't think too much of what Greason has been able to build, and a lot of those bodies like Mike Adams and stuff are aging very, very, very quickly. In like 2 or 3 years, it wouldn't surprise me if Henry Anderson was the best player on that side of the ball for the Indianapolis Colts. And then Trey Flowers being selected by the Patriots in the 4th round, picked 101. I mean, with him, Jabal Shurd, and Chandler Jones, like they aren't going to have a bunch of great pass rushers, but if they're going to keep their legs fresh, they have a bunch of good run defenders, and those guys can like luck into sacks as the offensive line's legs start to wear down, and they're just able to rotate these guys. I mean, that Trey Flowers selection is probably one of my favorites of this class.
On the flip side, and I'll start with this one because we all know what I'm going to say. I hate Marcus Mariota going to the Tennessee Titans and being teamed up with Ken Wisenhunt. As far as developing quarterbacks, I mean, he did an okay job in his couple years with Ben Roethlisberger there in Pittsburgh, but after that, like, Wiz has been more of a destroyer of quarterback talent than a developer, and I think part of the problem is he needs a quarterback that understands all the nuances of the game. That's why you've seen Kurt Warner and Phillip Rivers be really successful in his offenses, and then you've seen everybody else bomb. So I don't know. Like I hate that for Mariota. I hope he's successful and that Wiz keeps his job because I don't want to see anybody lose their job. But as far as that goes, I'd be cool if like Wiz was out next year, so Mariota could get a coach that could, quote unquote, coach him up and get him prepped to be a good quarterback in the league. Because you hate to see him bust because of what happened with being teamed up with Ken Wisenhunt. What about you, Justice?
We just need to quote that 3 and 25 as much as possible. Just turn up that hot seat, man. We got to turn it up. We got to free Marcus. This ain't fair. This ain't fair to him. Did you guys, by the way, did you guys see the reaction from 2 of the Tennessee Titans receivers? I was actually at football practice because I just started helping out the high school, and I ended up looking at my phone, and in like one of the group chats, people are like talking about how 2 of the receivers when the selection was made, and there's like a whole video to it. And, the 2nd overall pick quarterback Marcus Mariota, Oregon, and I can't remember. I think it was.
It was Hunter and Kendall Wright.
Yeah, it was Hunter and Wright, and they just start shaking their head and stuff, man. That's gonna be super interesting to see play out. Oh man, I don't know what's gonna happen. Just free Marcus. Like, we gotta start this now. Like, Ken Wisenhunt, if he can't win like 6 games next year, he needs to go, man.
Yeah, I think Mariota's probably a guy in this category that you and all of us would have included because it's just not a good fit. And they seem to be willing right up until the last minute to get rid of that pick. I understand those 2 receivers having that reaction just because they've had a chance to spend a year with Mettenberger and become friends. I would have liked to see their reaction to Dorial Green-Beckham getting picked in the second round because he's likely to take one of their jobs. I would have loved to see it if they took, like Seth predicted last week, if they took Kevin White with that number 2 overall pick and then see their reaction. Let's see what the – I mean, these are two players that I think by most measures have been kind of underachievers as far as where they were drafted and what they've done. So their reaction was – it was a natural human reaction, I think, because they are friendly with Mettenberger, and now his job is in jeopardy. But it was very, very interesting to see that, and I'm with you guys. I think that's one of those picks that I wrote down as like bad fit and bad chance to succeed. And Mariota seems like a great kid, but this is probably the worst place he could have ended up. Well, maybe not the worst, but one of the worst.
You guys got any more takes on this draft, or you want to get to these hot takes that are burning up the timeline?
Let's get these hot takes going.
All right, Justin, you can start us off, man.
Oh, the best one is Darren Page being quoted. He tweeted out, "The uniformity of wins to Minnesota projections is pretty incredible. I'm glad so many people will be wrong." And that got retweeted 20 times and favored 33 times. That's going to come back and haunt him a couple times. Sorry, man. Like, Zimmer's about to make him a Pro Bowler, so like I wouldn't worry too much.
Well, and his take after that, I don't know if you guys got that, but I did. Language about to happen.
Someone.
Yeah, language about to happen, but this is Darren Page, not me. So he said, "I have to watch this piece of shit cornerback play more football and write about him. This is bullshit." So after scrubbing on everybody, everybody's predicting this is never going to happen. He even said it himself. I rooted for Twitter meltdowns, and I had to be the first one. The universe is a dickhead. Yeah, I'm happy for you, Darren. You got your quarterback, as Arif said, you got your quarterback last year, so now you get to deal with the consequences of that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that was my feeling when the Packers took Aaron Ripkowski, the fullback out of Oklahoma, in the 6th round. I was like, son of a bitch. Like, I'm going to end up having to write like 3 different reports on this backup fullback that's probably not going to beat out John Kuhn. Damn it.
Justin, what about you?
Well, this one came across today from Lauren Cox. It says, Randy Gregory is out of the NFL in 5 years. Man, I really like Randy Gregory, and having heard him speak after being picked and the way he handled his situation, I'm really rooting for the guy, not just because I thought he was a great prospect, but because I know that he's had some adversity to deal with. I don't think his problem is solely marijuana, like a lot of people want to make it out to be. And I just think, like, I know Dallas maybe has, that organization over the years has housed some pretty unique characters and gotten them to go on to pretty successful careers. So I'm really hoping for the best for Randy Gregory. I saw Lauren's take wasn't the only one I saw like that. I think our buddy Jeff Risden, had a similar take, and I talked to him about it Saturday. His was something to the effect of Dallas just wasted a 2nd-round pick. So I really I understand why people feel strongly, especially in light of a guy like Josh Gordon and maybe Justin Blackmon, the way they've fizzled out. But I'm really hoping for the best for Gregory, and I think that falls into hot take category. But I do understand why people are having those hot takes. And there's a reason why he falls to 60 in this draft, because he's, this draft, look at the talent level. There's no other reason a guy like that should fall that far.
Yeah, we got a couple more. There were a lot of bad things said during draft week. Josh Norris reported that Trent Dilfer said that he believes Bryce Petty will develop into a Pro Bowl quarterback. I'm willing to bet on that a lot of money, like basically my life savings, that he will not become a Pro Bowl quarterback. Ryan Van Bieber, who works for SB Nation. Michael Silver tweeted, "The Rams are taking a player who won't start for them." ... And he quoted that and said, "Tavon Austin again." Another highlight was Matt Miller of Bleacher Report, our dude, talking about how Ty Montgomery might not be drafted, and then Ty Montgomery was immediately drafted after he tweeted that.
Who did he go to again, Justice? I forget.
The Green Bay Packers.
Probably the
It'd be an
best
awesome
place he
kicker.
could have gone.
You know what? They said that he's a taller version of Randall Cobb. So
I didn't mind the pick, but I just knew you'd hate it, so I was excited about it.
And I did not love it. The best thing about the selection of Ty Montgomery is that like the GM, the head of college scouting, and an area scout all went into the presser, and when they were talking about why they selected him and like people bringing up his senior season, they're like, "Oh no, you got to throw that out because the quarterback that he played with." And like we're only like three different high-ranking members of the Packers are like, no, you got to like throw that dude out. Like he kind of ruined his college tape. And we're not too far from like there were like legitimate first-round conversations with Kevin Hogan. Like I'm not gonna watch him this summer. I hope after Kevin Hogan played Washington's football team, I stopped watching both of their games live because I couldn't deal with those offenses. Like I hope to God I don't have to write a report on him next year.
Yeah, Kevin Hogan's windup is something like a slow pitch softball pitcher. So I wouldn't necessarily put him in any type of day 1 or 2 conversation. I wanted to bring up some hot takes about Cleveland's Duke Johnson pick in the 3rd round, a pick that I absolutely loved. And it seems that the fantasy football community is very, very high on Isaiah Crowell. I tweeted a stat that over the final 5 games of the season last year, Crowell averaged about 2.8 yards a carry. He was actually less effective as a go-to running back than Terrence West, a player who, that brings me to the hot take. Zach Boehner tweeted, "Terrence West is going to get traded tomorrow for a 6th round pick." That was on May 1st, which was Friday, after the Duke Johnson pick. Not only did Terrence West not get traded, but I think people are writing him off, and he very well could be the guy sharing carries with Duke Johnson. I think Duke is, you guys know, as well as many people on Twitter know, that I'm a big Duke Johnson believer, and that I think he's ultimately going to take a big load in that offense. But I wouldn't write off Terrence West, and I wouldn't be surprised if Terrence West is the number 2 guy ahead of Isaiah Crowell. As much as I like Crowell, West was a player that the Browns not only devoted a 3rd round pick to last year, but they traded up back into the 3rd round to take him. And he does, while Crowell is more of a better one-cut runner, West does all the other things better. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a team that's going to throw more to their backs, and they're going to rely on the backs. Maybe not Duke, but one of those backs is going to have to pass protect. And I think West has the edge over Crowell. So certainly he didn't get traded, and I don't necessarily think he's the odd man out.
Another one I got today from Chase Cameron was he didn't like the Broncos' first round selection of Shane Ray. A win-now team takes a mediocre edge rusher that will sit behind an All-Pro and a Hall of Famer. No thanks. I mean, I get where it's coming from. I get where it's coming from, but I don't know. Like, that's a...
Speaking of guys who are sitting behind other guys, like Zach Stacy, tweeting out "yikes" as soon as the St. Louis Rams traded Todd Gurley, and then his ass was shipped to New York for a 7th round pick, real quick.
Good pickup by the Jets.
The Jets might not be terrible. They just need a quarterback, like a real life breathing quarterback.
Seth, do we still believe in Geno Smith? I mean, otherwise Devin Smith is a pretty shitty pick for them in the 2nd round.
I think that's a bad pick anyways, with all the wide receivers they signed, right? But plus, you and Ethan Hammerman were talking about today. You guys had like a 4th and 5th round grade on.
No. Ethan actually had Devin Smith as one of his guys in early November, and it was me who said that Devin Smith was a good special teamer, and I would take him in the 5th-round pick. Now, one of my hot takes was that Corey Brown, Philly Brown of the Panthers, was a better player. I backtracked on that as the season went on because obviously Devin Smith caught fire toward the end. But I still never wavered on Smith being like a 3rd, 4th-round guy, and a special teams ace potentially. But then when the Jets take him in the 2nd round, you're removing him from special team ace territory and making him number 2, number 3 receiver territory, and that's still, Ethan I think was tweaking me a little bit, and that's fine. I don't mind it at all, but I'm still not sold on Devin Smith's pro potential as far as a 2nd-round pick.
You know how fast he is?
Not as fast as J.J. Nelson.
Yeah, not as fast as people thought either. He was a 4.4 2 guy. He wasn't a 4.3 guy like Daniel Jeremiah propped him up to be after that Wisconsin game.
Plus, the Cardinals took a guy that weighs less than my 9-year-old, so... So there's that. I mean, he is fast, though. I'll give him that.
After J.J. Nelson ran 4.2, 4.28 at the Combine, I tweeted that middle schooler J.J. Nelson snuck into the Combine and ran a sub 4.3. I mean, this guy weighs less than I weighed in 8th grade when I played football and was an outside linebacker. So I don't know. I just don't like using a pick on a guy like that when you can get a player I go back to, which is recent history, and I know it's recency bias, but Taylor Gabriel going to the Browns as an undrafted free agent last year and having success, and was actually tested out to be a much better athlete than J.J. Nelson.
That was the funny thing about Nelson, that like the rest of his numbers aren't good.
No.
For what he is. I was going to put him into Justice's Force Players rankings, but I was afraid. I was afraid it was going to break the machine because I thought that 156.
Okay, someone said that about Eli Harold too. Sully been talking about Eli Harold and Max Vales like they were some sort of superhumans, and the Max Vales ran like a 4.8.
Does the Force Players weight machine go down to 156, or does it like cap out at 230?
You know what? If it breaks my computer, someone owes me another one. We'll get a Kickstarter started.
Yeah, you can get those for podcasts too. So I mean, maybe we'll start doing that. Anything else, hot takes wise, guys?
I got a couple more. These are more just like general information that I found that was like kind of interesting. Like Joe Marino tweeted out that Garrett Grayson was the highest quarterback drafted by the Saints since Archie Manning. That was 1971. My father was born in 1972. So that kind of seems like I don't believe that stat's like actually real. Like my mind can't grasp that concept. Bruce Irvin also told Mel Kiper to shut his hating ass up. Bruce Irvin had an interesting weekend because Bruce Irvin didn't have his extension or his 5th-year option picked up. Tweeted out like it's a business or something like along those lines. Then like right before day 1 started, rumors came out that he was going to be traded to the Atlanta Falcons. Then he's like going at Kiper for like Vic Beasley got drafted, and then he just started going at Kiper for like no reason, and then or just like just going in on him. And then later that week, like someone talked to him about Dan Quinn, and he was like, "That's my dude." So like this whole Bruce Irvin situation is kind of like really weird. Like probably the last 2 months, especially since his whole like April Fool's, haha, didn't get a fake DUI thing. Like that was like ever since then, Bruce Irvin's been a weird conversation point in football. And then our dude Andrew Parsons congratulating the Jaguars on a good draft by saying, "Nice job, Jaguars, 7-9."
That would be an improvement. But hey, who did Bruce Irvin call a hoe? There was somebody he called a hoe earlier in the week, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know that person.
I think it was a random person.
Yeah,
he was just like getting in an argument. Yeah, he's an interesting tweeter, man. He sure is something.
What about you, Justin? You got any more? No, He said it
kinda...
to Ross Tucker.
Oh, it was Ross Tucker.
Yeah, when he was comparing Irvin or Beasley to Irvin, he said you a hoe too. Hey Bruce, if you listen to this, you're more than welcome to come on the show. We'll do a whole segment of you and hot takes, whatever you want to say, buddy.
And I actually think that Ross Tucker has a pretty decent podcast, although half of it is ads. But I'm a big Bruce Irvin fan going back to his West Virginia days, so I found that hilarious. But you know, it's never good to call anybody a hoe, but it is funny. But it's also funny when you misspell it.
You got any more tonight, Justin?
No, I'm pretty exhausted on the hot takes. I mean, I could rehash my own hot takes about why Cameron Irving in the first round is an odd pick to me, because he's a first round center and the Browns already have a Pro Bowl center, but I was already roundly booed for that. So I'll let that one go and just hope that he turns into a Pro Bowl right guard, I guess.
Justice, you got any thoughts on your Packers draft class, as you've written about it 100 times already?
Yo, we just got the best first round gunner you guys have ever seen. Like, we're gonna be so good on special teams. We're gonna kill it on special teams this year.
I can't wait to teach Christian Ringo how to long snap too. I mean, that's gonna be key.
Yeah, all these guys play different positions, man.
You know, speaking of ESPN getting that wrong and calling Ringo a long snapper, at the beginning of day 3, I don't know if you guys caught this, but they were going through Kuiper's best available, and his 6th best available player going into the day was Michael Bennett. Now, I assume he was talking about Ohio State's Michael Bennett, who you touched on earlier, Justice, but it said Michael Bennett, wide receiver, Georgia. I know that is an actual player that exists, but I don't see how that could have possibly been the Michael Bennett they intended at 6th overall.
ESPN messes up a little bit every once in a while. I mean, they had Whitney Merciless as like a nose tackle at one point. I remember during the draft cycle, Whitney Merciless was like a 300-pound nose tackle for him. It's like, no.
And Dan at Mocking the Draft was, I believe he was the one that pointed that out. So, and they even had a scouting report on that, which was very interesting.
Really?
It was a very brief scouting report that you would read for any 360-pound nose tackle.
The jig is up. The jig is up, Kuiper. We coming for you.
All right. Well, next week we're going to get started on a special summer-long segment. So if you're a draft evaluator that likes to get your stuff, your work out there, well, this is probably not for you. But if you're somebody that's willing to come on and talk about the past and how much you suck at scouting, well, then this is definitely the series for you. Why You Suck at Scouting starts next week. And we're going to start at home with the 3 of us and why we suck at scouting. And we'll start from there, and we'll have guests on every week to talk about why they suck at scouting and their past big boards and things of that nature. It's going to be fun. It's going to be done in fun, unless you make Justice mad, and then we'll have to go at you hard. But it's going to be an enjoyable summer to kind of lighten up the mood and remind everybody in the draft Twitter community or the internet draft community that this is about having fun as much as it is about a business. So and plus we want to knock all your brands down a little bit. So we'll get that started next week with the Draft Savages, why we suck at scouting, and we'll get that going. So Justin, thank you guys as always. And we'll be back next week to get the summer started, guys.
All right, see you guys.
Good night, fellas.